I thought I was finally burning the last bridge with my ex. Looking back, I should have realized that revenge rarely tastes as sweet as we imagine, especially when you sink your teeth into the wrong man's neck. Isla's heart hammered against her ribs, liquid courage burning through her veins as she slipped through the shadowed alley behind the howling moon. The heavy bass from inside the club vibrated through the soles of her boots, matching the thundering pulse in her ears. Tonight was supposed to be her closure, one last chance to show Derek exactly what he'd thrown away, what she had to lose. Her carefully constructed independence, the freedom she'd fought for after years beneath her family's thumb, and the anonymity that kept her safe from pack politics. What she was hiding, despite her cynical exterior, a part of her still believed in the ancient magic of true mates, a weakness she couldn't afford after Derek had left her broken. What could emotionally destroy her? Discovering that the mate bond she'd fought so hard against was real, but meant nothing more than a biological trap. "You sure you want to do this?" Maya's voice crackled through her phone, concern evident even through the static. Biting an ex goodbye isn't exactly standard breakup protocol. Isla laughed bitterly, breath clouding in the cool night air. After what he did, leaving me for his politically advantageous arranged mate, he deserves to feel something real before he settles for his perfect paper marriage. And then she saw him, or at least she thought she did. A tall silhouette, broad shoulders, that familiar swagger as he stepped out for a smoke. The same arrogant tilt of his head she'd once found charming. The same build that had held her through countless nights. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, pressing forward with a hunger that was half rage, half desire. "I see him," she whispered, the words more growl than speech. "I'll call you back." Without waiting for Maya's response, she ended the call, slipping the phone into her pocket. Her feet carried her forward before her mind could second-guess. The alley was darker than she'd expected, the only illumination coming from a single flickering streetlight that cast everything in amber shadows. Her wolf clawed inside her chest, demanding retribution. As if pulled by a string, she moved toward him, stealth forgotten in her determination. He stood with his back to her, smoke curling above his head in the dim light. "Derek!" she meant to say, but his name caught in her throat. Instead, she reached out, grabbing his shoulder and spinning him around. Before he could speak, she pressed her body against his, backing him against the brick wall. The scent hit her then. Wrong. All wrong. Not Derek's familiar cedar and smoke, but something wilder, like lightning-struck pine and night air. Her body recognized the difference before her mind did, but momentum had already taken over. As the silence stretched between them, his eyes widened, piercing blue instead of Derek's deep brown. Not Derek, not even close. But she was already moving, her wolf taking control in a surge of reckless impulse. Her teeth found his neck, breaking skin before she could stop herself. Hot, copper salt blood touched her tongue, and with it came something else. A rush of power, ancient and primal, flooding her system like electricity. The stranger's body went rigid against hers, a sound somewhere between a gasp and a growl vibrating through his chest. His hands seized her waist, but instead of pushing her away, they tightened, pulling her closer. The moment their connection flared, something impossible happened. A bond, bright, blinding, and terrifying, snapped into place between them. Her knees buckled as images flooded her mind. Moonlit forests she'd never run through, faces of wolves she'd never met, and an overwhelming sense of power that could only belong to one type of wolf. An alpha. She'd just bitten an alpha. With a shocked gasp, she tore herself away, stumbling backward. The man before her touched his neck, blood staining his fingertips as he stared at her with a mixture of shock and something far more dangerous. Fascination. "You're not Derek," she whispered stupidly, stating the obvious as horror dawned. The stranger's lips curved into a slow, predatory smile. "No," he agreed, his voice deep and steady despite what had just happened. "I'm Kade. Kade Thorne." The name hit her like a physical blow. Kade Thorne, the alpha heir to the Silver Moon Pack, their rival territory, the man who was supposed to be announcing his engagement tonight to unite the fractured wolf communities. "Oh, goddess," she breathed, her back hitting the opposite wall as she retreated. I thought... "You thought I was someone else," he finished for her, advancing slowly, making no move to stem the blood from the bite on his neck. In fact, he seemed entirely unconcerned by it, his focus solely on her. And yet, your wolf knew exactly what she was doing. Her breath caught as the implications crashed over her. Without thinking, she turned to run, but his hand caught her wrist, spinning her back with effortless strength. "Don't," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of his rank. "You don't get to mark me and run." "It was a mistake," Isla pleaded, tugging against his grip. This can't... A mistake?" He raised an eyebrow, his thumb brushing over her racing pulse. "Is that what you call it when your wolf claims what she wants?" Deep down, she knew the truth. Her wolf had recognized something in him that her human mind had been too stubborn to see, something that resonated with the most primal part of her. To make things worse, her body was responding to his proximity in ways she couldn't control, heat crawling across her skin wherever he touched her. "Let me go," she whispered, though her wolf was howling in protest inside her. "I'm sorry, I was trying to..." "You were trying to mark your ex," he interrupted, his expression darkening. "And instead, you marked me. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Before she could answer, shouts echoed from the club entrance. The doors burst open, spilling light and music into the night. A group of wolves in formal attire emerged, their voices raised in concern. "Kade, the Elder Council is waiting for your announcement," a woman called. "They're ready for your engagement ceremony." Isla's stomach dropped. The engagement ceremony. The one that was supposed to unite the Silver Moon Pack with the Northern Rivers Pack through Kade's arranged marriage. The one she'd just destroyed with a single, reckless bite. Kade's eyes never left her face as he called back. "Tell them there's been a complication." As the realization of what she'd done sank in, Isla felt the world shifting beneath her feet. She hadn't just ruined her night. She'd upended the delicate political balance between 3 territories. She'd destroyed a peace treaty years in the making. "I should have known," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Nothing in my life ever goes according to plan." Kade's grip on her wrist softened slightly, his thumb tracing circles on her skin that sent shivers up her arm. "Plans change," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But fate rarely makes mistakes." His eyes held hers, that impossible blue burning with something that made her wolf howl in triumph even as her human half trembled in fear. "I didn't just ruin one life," she realized aloud, her voice barely audible over the distant music. "I set 2 packs on fire with a single reckless bite." Kade's smile widened, revealing a hint of fang. 3 packs, actually. And sweetheart, some things deserve to burn. Fate has a cruel sense of humor. One moment you're a nobody wolf trying to forget an ex, and the next, you're pack enemy number 1 with the most dangerous alpha in 3 territories hunting for your scent. The council chambers vibrated with barely contained fury. 12 elder wolves seated in their ancient half-moon formation, eyes gleaming with contempt as they stared down at Kade. He stood before them, shoulders squared, the mark on his neck deliberately exposed, a silent challenge to anyone who dared question what had happened. The chamber itself was intimidating by design, carved from living rock beneath the Silver Moon packhouse, illuminated by torches that cast long, dancing shadows across stone walls adorned with the painted lineage of every alpha who had ever ruled. Tonight, those ancestral eyes seemed to watch with particular judgment. "This is unprecedented," Elder Miriam hissed, her voice carrying the weight of her 90 years. "A rogue female marking an alpha heir on the eve of a political mating? It cannot stand." Next to her, Elder Thaddeus nodded gravely. "The Northern Rivers Pack is demanding blood. Their daughter was humiliated, their alliance shattered." Despite the gravity of the situation, Kade felt strangely calm. The bite on his neck pulsed with a pleasant warmth that spread throughout his body, as if his wolf had finally found something it had been searching for his entire life. What he had to lose. His pack's respect, the political stability he'd worked years to build, and the legacy his father had sacrificed everything to protect. What he was hiding. That from the moment her teeth had broken his skin, something that had been dormant inside him had awakened. A hunger that made arranged matings and political alliances seem hollow and meaningless. What could emotionally destroy him? Discovering that this bond, the first real thing he'd ever felt, was nothing more than an accident she was desperate to escape. The mark must be rejected, Elder Miriam continued, gesturing toward the pack healer who stood waiting with a foul-smelling paste. We have the ritual prepared. By morning, you can be cleansed of this mistake. Kade's wolf surged forward at the suggestion, a growl building deep in his chest before he could stop it. The sound reverberated through the chamber, silencing the elders immediately. No, he said simply, his voice deceptively soft. Elder Thaddeus leaned forward, bushy eyebrows drawing together. No? May I remind you, Kade, that your personal preferences have never been the priority. Your duty— My duty, Kade interrupted, is to follow the ancient laws that govern us all, and those laws are clear. His fingers brushed against the mark on his neck. A claiming bite, freely given and accepted by my wolf, cannot be undone. The chamber erupted in outraged whispers. As if pulled by invisible strings, Elder Miriam rose to her feet, her small frame vibrating with indignation. Freely given? She attacked you in an alley. She ran before even giving her name. A smile curved Kade's lips, surprising even himself. Then we have a mystery to solve, don't we? This is madness, one of the younger elders muttered. The northern rivers will declare war. Kade's gaze swept the room, his alpha presence filling the chamber until the torches themselves seemed to flicker under the weight of his power. Let them try. Under the weight of his stare, the council members shifted uncomfortably. They had forgotten, perhaps, that while he had played the dutiful heir for years, his wolf had always been too dominant, too powerful to be truly controlled. Without another word, he turned and strode from the chamber, their protests fading behind him. The moment the heavy wooden doors closed, his second-in-command materialized from the shadows. That went well, Lucas said dryly, falling into step beside him. Kade snorted. It went exactly as expected. And the girl? The one who marked you? Something inside Kade's chest tightened at the mention of her. Her scent still clung to him, wild honey and rain-soaked earth with an undertone of defiance that made his wolf pace with anticipation. Find her, he ordered, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Every scout, every patrol. I want eyes in every pack within 100 miles. Lucas studied him carefully. And when we find her? Kade paused at the entrance to his quarters, moonlight streaming through the high windows, casting his face in silver shadow. When we find her, he said slowly, she'll learn what it means to run from an alpha. Meanwhile, across the territory border, Isla's hands trembled as she attempted to change her appearance for the third time that day. Strands of hair scattered across the bathroom floor. First brown, then blonde, now a deep auburn that made her look sickly under the harsh fluorescent light. It's not working, Maya said from her perch on the edge of the bathtub, concern etching lines around her eyes. Your scent won't change no matter what color your hair is. I have to try something, Isla snapped, panic clawing at her throat. All day the news had spread through every pack channel. The alpha heir of Silver Moon was hunting for the female who had marked him, who had destroyed his arranged mating and thrown 3 territories into chaos. Her neck burned where the bond had formed, a phantom echo of the bite she'd left on Kade's skin. Every instinct urged her to go to him, to complete what they had started. Her wolf howled inside her, furious at their separation. As though reading her thoughts, Maya leaned forward. Maybe you should just go to him. Explain what happened. Isla's laugh held an edge of hysteria. Explain what? That I mistook the most powerful alpha in the region for my cheating ex? That I bit him in a drunken attempt at closure? Before Maya could respond, Isla's phone vibrated with an incoming message. It was from an unknown number, containing only 4 words that made her blood freeze. I can smell you. He found me, she whispered, showing the phone to Maya. Maya's eyes widened. That's impossible. We're miles away, across territory lines. No wolf could track you this far, this fast. Yet the evidence was there, glowing on her screen. From the corner of her eye, Isla caught movement outside the window, a flash of silver fur in the trees behind Maya's house. Her heart stuttered, then raced. I have to run, she said, already grabbing her bag. Maya caught her arm. You can't outrun an alpha, Isla, especially not one who carries your mark. The bond will only grow stronger the more you fight it. What choice do I have? Isla demanded. Do you have any idea what the council will do to me? A nobody who destroyed a political alliance generations in the making? Her friend's expression softened. Maybe it's not about what you did. Maybe it's about why your wolf chose him in the first place. The thought had been haunting Isla since it happened. Her wolf had never responded to Derek that way, never surged forward with such certainty. With Kade, it had been instantaneous, a recognition so deep it bypassed all rational thought. The phone vibrated again. Another message. Running only makes the chase more interesting. Something between fear and excitement fluttered in her stomach. She stuffed the last of her belongings into her bag, then hesitated at the door. If I don't contact you in 3 days, tell my sister what happened. Maya nodded solemnly. Where will you go? Isla thought of the underground wolf markets, the hidden places where rogues and outcasts gathered, places an alpha from a prestigious pack would never deign to search. Somewhere he won't follow. But as she slipped out into the night, Kade's last message burned in her mind, along with the memory of his eyes, confident, knowing, almost amused, as if he could see right through her plans. If I ran fast enough, maybe fate would miss me this time. But deep down, a part of her, the part that had urged her wolf to bite him in the first place, wondered if running was what she truly wanted. Behind her, a howl rose into the night, deep, powerful, and unmistakably alpha. Not a cry of anger, but a promise. The hunt had begun. They say destiny finds you even when you're hiding. What they don't mention is how it sometimes wears a mask, speaks in riddles, and dances with you under paper lanterns before revealing its true face. The underground wolf market pulsed with life beneath the abandoned warehouse district, a hidden world where pack boundaries blurred and rogue wolves found temporary sanctuary. Isla pulled her hood lower, adjusting the ornate festival mask that covered the upper half of her face. The moonlight market was her best chance at anonymity, held only 4 times a year during the quarter moons. It attracted wolves from dozens of territories who came to trade, gossip, and disappear. 3 days of constant movement had left Isla exhausted, the bond mark on her neck throbbing with increasing intensity. Each mile she put between herself and Kade seemed to make it burn hotter, as if punishing her for fighting what her wolf had chosen. You look like you need this more than I do, a gruff voice said, sliding a steaming cup across the makeshift bar. Isla glanced up to find an elderly wolf watching her with knowing eyes. His mask was simple compared to the elaborate designs around them, just a weathered piece of leather with silver markings that reminded her of claw marks. What is it? She asked, suspicion coloring her voice. The old wolf's lips twitched. Moonberry tea. Helps with bond sickness. Her hand froze halfway to the cup. I'm not bonded. That mark peeking above your collar says otherwise, he replied mildly. Fresh, too. No more than a few days old. Isla hurriedly adjusted her scarf. It was a mistake. At that, the old wolf laughed, a sound like gravel underfoot. Wolves don't make mistakes when it comes to marking, girl. Our instincts are older than our doubts. Before she could respond, a commotion rippled through the market. Whispers spread like wildfire, heads turning toward the main entrance. Isla's heart plummeted as she caught fragments of conversation. Alpha. Silver moon. Searching. Without thinking, she grabbed the tea and melted into the crowd, weaving between vendors and ducking under hanging lanterns. The bond mark burned as if responding to his proximity, her wolf suddenly alert and eager after days of sullen protest. In her haste, she collided with a solid chest, tea splashing across expensive-looking fabric. Strong hands steadied her before she could fall, gripping her elbows with surprising gentleness. "In a hurry?" a deep voice asked, amusement threading through the words. Isla looked up into masked eyes, but even with the disguise, something about him sent a jolt of recognition through her. Broad shoulders, dark hair swept back from a strong forehead, and beneath the ornate gold and black mask, lips curved in a smile that was both predatory and playful. Yet nothing in his manner suggested he recognized her. His scent was masked too, a trick most wolves learned for the market to prevent old feuds from disrupting trade. "Sorry," she mumbled, attempting to step around him. His hand caught hers. "Leaving so soon? The lantern dance is about to begin." As if on cue, the market's central area cleared, and dozens of paper lanterns descended from the warehouse ceiling, bathing everything in warm golden light. Traditional drums began a hypnotic rhythm that seemed to bypass her human senses and speak directly to her wolf. "I'm not really here to dance," she said, trying to keep her voice from betraying her nerves. The masked stranger tilted his head, studying her with unsettling intensity. "Everyone's here to dance in one way or another. Some just haven't admitted it to themselves yet." Without waiting for her response, he guided her toward the clearing, where other masked wolves were already forming a circle. The traditional lantern dance was ancient, a ritual that predated modern pack structures when wolves would gather without territory limitations to find potential mates. "I don't know the steps," Isla protested weakly as he positioned her across from him in the circle. His smile widened. "Your wolf does." And then the circle began to move, partners weaving around each other in intricate patterns, never touching but always connected by an invisible thread. To her surprise, her body responded instinctively, following the rhythm as if she'd danced it 100 times before. "Who are you?" she asked as they circled each other, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Tonight? Just another mask," he replied. "Isn't that the point of the market? To be whoever we want for a few hours?" There was something familiar in his manner, in the way he moved with absolute confidence. Each time they passed, his scent teased her senses, never quite the same, yet stirring something deep within her wolf. "You're hiding something," she observed as the dance brought them face to face. His laugh was low and intimate. Says the she-wolf wearing a disguise and running from something that makes her heart race. The accuracy of his assessment startled her. "What makes you think I'm running?" "Your eyes," he said simply. "They're scanning every exit, calculating escape routes." The drums intensified and the dance evolved. Now partners moved closer with each pass, an ancient mimicry of predator and prey. The stranger's movements became more fluid, more deliberate, each turn bringing him nearer until his breath warmed her cheek. "Maybe I'm not running," she challenged, surprising herself with her boldness. "Maybe I'm hunting." Something flashed behind his mask. Approval, amusement, desire, gone too quickly to identify. "And what prey would you be seeking in the shadows, little wolf?" "Freedom," she answered honestly. His expression softened, unexpected vulnerability crossing his features. "The rarest prey of all." As the dance reached its crescendo, lantern light caught on something at his wrist, a flash of silver that made her heart stutter. A bracelet with the silver moonpack insignia, worn only by those in the Alpha's inner circle. Their eyes met, and this time she saw the recognition dawning in his gaze. The mask had slipped, literally and figuratively, revealing a sliver of those piercing blue eyes she'd seen in the alley. Kade. Isla broke away before the dance ended, pushing through the crowd with renewed panic. Behind her, she heard him call out not her name, he didn't know it yet, but a single word that followed her like a promise. Wait! She fled through the twisting paths of the market, heart hammering against her ribs. The bond mark pulsed in time with her racing pulse, her wolf howling in protest at running from what it had chosen. When she finally stopped, breathless and disoriented in a quiet corner of the market, she found herself before a fortune-teller's booth. The ancient female wolf inside didn't look up from her cards as she spoke. Running from an alpha, she clicked her tongue. Futile, like trying to outrun your own shadow. Isla stiffened. I don't know what you're talking about. The fortune-teller shuffled her worn cards. The mark on your neck speaks louder than your lies, child. Sit. Let the cards tell what fate has written. Against her better judgment, Isla sank onto the cushion opposite the old wolf, who dealt 3 cards between them. The past, she tapped the first card, showing a wolf with 2 shadows. A divided heart, wanting one thing, chasing another. Her finger moved to the second card, a wolf surrounded by mirrors. The present, hiding from truth, even from yourself. The final card made Isla's breath catch. 2 wolves, one dark, one light, running toward each other beneath a blood moon. The future, the fortune-teller said softly, inevitable as the moon's pull on the tides. A shadow fell across the booth entrance. Isla didn't need to turn to know who stood there. Her wolf recognized him, her bond mark singing with proximity. Found you, Kade said softly. The fortune-teller chuckled, gathering her cards. Fate always wins in the end, little one. Isla remained frozen, caught between flight and surrender. She should have known. No one else ever made her wolf purr and panic at the same time. The most dangerous moment isn't when a predator finds you. It's the breathless second when you realize you wanted to be found all along. Found you, Kade repeated, his voice dipping lower as he stepped into the fortune-teller's tent, ducking his head beneath the low entrance. The market sounds faded to a distant hum, as if the small space existed in its own pocket of reality. The fortune-teller chuckled knowingly as she gathered her cards. I believe my services are no longer required, she murmured, rising with surprising grace for one so ancient. She patted Isla's frozen shoulder as she passed. Remember, child, the cards never lie. And then they were alone. Kade filled the small space entirely, not just physically, though his broad shoulders nearly touched both sides of the tent, but with a presence that made the air heavy and charged. He'd removed his festival mask, revealing the face that had haunted Isla's dreams for days. In the lantern light, his features were all sharp angles and shadows, his blue eyes almost luminous as they fixed on her. Your disguise is clever, he said, reaching forward to brush his fingers against the edge of her mask. But futile. Isla's heart hammered against her ribs, her wolf surging forward with joy even as her human side calculated escape routes. The tent had only one entrance, now blocked by 6 feet of alpha werewolf who looked entirely too pleased with himself. How did you find me? She managed, her voice steadier than she expected. Kade's lips curved into a smile that was equal parts predatory and amused. You really don't understand what you did when you marked me, do you? Before she could respond, he moved closer, each step deliberate. The small space forced her to retreat until her back pressed against the fortune-teller's table, cards scattering beneath her palms. I could find you blindfolded in a blizzard now? He continued, reaching for her mask again. This time, his fingers hooked beneath the edge. Your scent, your heartbeat, they're imprinted on me. There isn't a place on this earth you could hide where I wouldn't eventually find you. Instead of fear, his words sent an inexplicable thrill through her. Her wolf practically purred with satisfaction. May I? He asked, surprising her with the gentleness in his voice as his fingers paused at her mask. Something in his request, the fact that he asked at all, made her nod slightly. Slowly, as if unwrapping something precious, Kade removed her mask. His breath caught audibly when her face was finally revealed, his eyes widening slightly as they traced every feature with undisguised fascination. "There you are," he murmured, and the quiet wonder in his voice made her chest tighten. No one had ever looked at her that way before, like she was something rare and valuable rather than a problem to be solved or a tool to be used. "Isla Vale," he said her name like he was tasting it. 26 years old, formerly of the Crescent Valley Pack before going rogue 3 years ago. Graduated top of your class in veterinary medicine, but never practiced. Her surprise must have shown on her face because he smiled again, this time with a hint of self-deprecation. "I've been looking for you for days. Did you think I wouldn't learn everything I could?" "And yet you're still here," she said, finding her voice at last. "Even knowing I'm nobody, just a rogue wolf who made a mistake." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Is that what you think? That you're nobody?" Without warning, he closed the distance between them, one hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness, while the other braced against the table behind her, effectively caging her in. "Let me tell you what I found, Isla Vale. A wolf so fiercely independent she walked away from pack protection rather than submit to an arranged mating. A healer who still treats injured wolves who can't afford pack doctors. A woman who, despite every reason to be cynical, still believes enough in true connection that she wanted one last moment of closure with someone who hurt her." Each word hit her like a physical blow. How could he know so much? How could he see past the carefully constructed walls she'd built around herself? "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the distant market sounds. The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a brief moment, the confident alpha facade slipped, revealing something raw and uncertain beneath. "I don't know," he admitted, and the honesty in those 3 words stunned her. "I've spent my entire life knowing exactly what was expected of me. Which treaties to sign, which alliances to forge, which mate to take for the good of the pack." His thumb traced the curve of her cheek, sending shivers down her spine. "And then you bit me," he continued, his voice deepening. "And for the first time in my life, the path ahead isn't mapped out in council decrees and ancient traditions." Despite the gravity of the situation, a laugh bubbled up from Isla's chest. "So I ruined your life." To her surprise, Kade laughed too, a rich sound that warmed the space between them. "You complicated it tremendously." "I'm sorry," she said automatically, his expression sobered. "Don't be. Some things need complicating." His gaze dropped to her lips, then lower, to where her scarf had shifted to reveal the bond mark on her neck, the mirror of the one she'd left on him. Without thinking, she reached up to touch it, her fingers brushing against his in the process. The contact sent a shock through the bond, making them both gasp. Images flashed behind her eyes. Memories that weren't hers. A young boy standing stiffly as his father addressed a council chamber, a teenager running alone through moonlit forests, a man staring at his reflection before an engagement ceremony, feeling nothing but emptiness. When the connection faded, Kade was watching her with newfound intensity. "You saw," he stated, rather than asked. Isla nodded, still reeling from the intimacy of glimpsing his memories. "The bond. It's stronger than I thought possible." "It's fighting to be completed," he said simply. The implication hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. To complete a mate bond meant giving herself to him entirely, wolf to wolf, body to body, soul to soul. There would be no going back, no undoing what had been started that night in the alley. Fear and desire warred within her. Her wolf urged surrender, while her human side counseled caution. "I can't," she said finally, pushing against his chest. "You're an alpha heir. I'm a rogue. The council would never allow it." Something shifted in Kade's expression, a hardening, a determination that reminded her exactly who she was dealing with. "The council doesn't decide who I claim," he said, his voice taking on the commanding edge that sent shivers down her spine. "I do." Before she could argue further, he stepped back, giving her space that both relieved and disappointed her. 3 days, he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "Come to Silver Moon territory willingly. Meet with me, talk with me. If after that time you still want to run, I won't stop you." Isla's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You'd just let me go? After all this?" The smile he gave her was anything but reassuring. "I didn't say I wouldn't find you again. Just that I wouldn't stop you." She should refuse. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at her to run faster, hide better. But something else, something deeper and more primal, made her nod. 3 days, she agreed. "And then I decide." Satisfaction gleamed in his eyes. With deliberate slowness, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering. "Until then, Isla Vale." He turned to leave, then paused at the tent entrance. Without looking back, he added softly, "And when you're ready to run again, remember, I enjoy the chase far more than you enjoy being caught." As he disappeared into the market crowd, Isla pressed a trembling hand to her racing heart. Was she running from him, or running from the part of herself that wanted to be caught? Some storms you see coming, dark clouds on the horizon, the electric charge in the air. Others blindside you completely. The storm of wanting someone you shouldn't, of realizing that freedom might not be what you thought it was at all. 2 days into her agreement with Kade, and Isla felt like she was living in the eye of a hurricane. Silver Moon territory was nothing like she'd expected. Instead of the sterile, militant compound she'd imagined, the main pack grounds sprawled across acres of pristine forest, dotted with modern cabins built to blend with the natural landscape. Kade had given her a guest house on the edge of the property, far enough from the main pack buildings to feel private, close enough to the territorial border to feel like an escape was possible. Not that she'd tried to run again. Not yet. The bond mark on her neck pulsed with constant awareness of Kade's presence, growing more insistent each time they were together, which had been often these past 48 hours, as he showed her his territory with undisguised pride. Tonight, however, was different. Tonight, the council had called an emergency meeting, and rumors rippled through the pack like wildfire. Isla felt the tension from her cabin porch, where she sat watching clouds gather on the distant mountains, promising a storm to match the one brewing inside the pack walls. "They're voting on us," a deep voice said from behind her. Isla didn't startle. Her wolf had sensed Kade's approach long before he spoke, practically purring with anticipation. She turned to find him leaning against the porch railing, his formal attire, a charcoal suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, at odds with the troubled expression on his face. "I thought the Alpha's word was law," she said, echoing what she'd heard whispered among pack members. A bitter smile touched his lips. "Even Alphas have councils to answer to, especially when they make decisions that threaten carefully crafted political alliances." Isla swallowed hard, guilt twisting in her stomach. "I've caused you nothing but trouble." "Trouble," Kade repeated, the word rolling off his tongue as if he were tasting it. He moved closer, his presence enveloping her like a physical thing. "Is that what you call this?" He gestured between them, to the invisible but undeniable pull that had been drawing them closer since the moment she'd bitten him. Even now, with inches between them, she could feel the bond humming, urging her to eliminate the distance. "What would you call it?" she challenged, trying to ignore the way her heart raced when he looked at her like that, like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Instead of answering, Kade extended his hand. "Come with me." Her eyebrows rose. "To the council meeting?" "No," he said, something wild flickering in his eyes. "The storm's coming. I want to show you something first." Against her better judgment, Isla took his hand. The moment their skin touched, the bond flared between them, warm and insistent. Images flashed behind her eyes, a cliff high above the valley, wind whipping through fur, the freedom of a moonlit run. "You're projecting," she murmured, both startled and intrigued by the intensity of the connection. Kade's fingers tightened around hers. "The bond's getting stronger. Hard to control sometimes." There was something raw in his admission, a vulnerability she hadn't expected from the composed alpha heir. Before she could respond, thunder rumbled in the distance, and Kade tugged her toward the forest path. "We need to hurry if we want to beat the rain." The path wound upward through ancient pines, steadily climbing until Isla's calves burned with the effort. Just when she thought they couldn't go any higher, the trees opened to reveal a stunning vista, a rocky outcropping that jutted over the valley, offering an unobstructed view of the storm rolling in across Silver Moon territory. Below them, packlands spread out like a living map, and beyond that, the territories of neighboring packs. Wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of rain and ozone, plastering Isla's shirt against her skin and tousling Kade's dark hair. "This is where I come when it all becomes too much," Kade said, raising his voice to be heard above the wind. "When the expectations, the politics, the duty feels like a cage." Isla moved closer to the edge, mesmerized by the darkening sky and the distant flash of lightning. "It's beautiful." "It's freedom," he corrected gently, coming to stand beside her. "Or the closest thing to it I've found." Something in his voice made her turn to study him. In the wild light of the approaching storm, with his hair windblown and his tie loosened, he looked less like the polished alpha heir and more like the wolf beneath, untamed, powerful, yearning for something just out of reach. "The council is demanding I reject your mark," he said abruptly, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "They've given me 14 days to choose another mate, one that will secure the alliance your bite destroyed." The words hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath despite their inevitability. Of course the council wouldn't accept her. A rogue wolf with no political value, no pack ties, nothing to offer but complications. "I refused," Kade continued, his voice dropping to a register that made her wolf stand at attention. "I told them I'd rather step down as heir than take a mate chosen for political convenience." Isla's head snapped up, shock coursing through her. "You'd give up your position as alpha? For a mate bond that happened by accident?" Lightning split the sky, followed almost immediately by a thunderclap that seemed to shake the very cliff beneath their feet. The first heavy drops of rain began to fall, but neither of them moved to seek shelter. "Was it really an accident, Isla?" Kade asked, turning to face her fully. "Your wolf chose me out of every wolf in that club, out of every wolf you've ever met. Do you really believe that was random chance?" "I thought you were Derek," she insisted, but the protest sounded weak even to her own ears. "Your human mind thought I was Derek," he corrected. "Your wolf knew exactly who I was." He stepped closer, rain now falling steadily around them, soaking through their clothes. "Tell me something. Did your wolf ever try to mark him? In all the time you were together, did your wolf ever push you to claim him?" The question struck her silent. She'd been with Derek for nearly 2 years, and despite his insistence that they were meant to be mates, her wolf had remained strangely indifferent. Not once had she felt the overwhelming urge to bite him, to mark him as hers. With Kade, it had taken less than a minute. "That's what I thought," he said softly, reading her silence correctly. Rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead, droplets clinging to his eyelashes and tracing paths down his cheeks like tears. Something broke loose inside her at the sight, a dam she hadn't realized she'd built, holding back everything she'd been afraid to feel. "I've spent 3 years running," she admitted, her voice barely audible above the storm. "From my old pack, from arranged matings, from feeling anything that might cage me again." Kade reached out, his fingers brushing a wet strand of hair from her face with unexpected tenderness. "What if what you're running from isn't a cage at all? What if it's the only thing that could truly set you free?" The question hung between them, charged as the lightning-streaked air. Her wolf strained toward him, while her human side calculated risks, weighed costs, envisioned futures rapidly branching in different directions. "I don't know how to stop running," she whispered, the admission torn from somewhere deep and honest. Thunder crashed directly overhead as if emphasizing her words. Rain poured down now, turning the world around them into flowing silver. "Then don't," Kade said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Run with me instead." Without warning, he stepped back, hands moving to his tie, then his shirt buttons. Isla's breath caught as understanding dawned. "Here? Now? In this storm?" His smile was pure wolf, wild, challenging, alive. "There's no better time to run than in a storm. Nothing hides the scent of freedom like rain." He shrugged out of his jacket, then his shirt, revealing the powerful lines of his chest and the stark black mark where her teeth had broken skin. The sight of her claim on him sent heat spiraling through her despite the cold rain. "Unless you're afraid," he added, the challenge clear in his voice as he reached for his belt. The old Isla, the one who'd spent years carefully constructing walls around her heart, would have turned away, made excuses, found reasons to maintain distance. But standing on that cliff, with rain washing away pretenses and the bond between them pulsing like a second heartbeat, she found herself reaching for the hem of her own shirt. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, pulling the sodden fabric over her head. His eyes darkened as they swept over her, appreciation and hunger evident in his gaze. "Perhaps you should be." Within moments, they stood before each other in nothing but skin, two apex predators beneath a raging sky. Then, in perfect synchronicity, they shifted, bones cracking, forms blurring, until a massive black wolf and a smaller russet one stood in their place. Kade's wolf was magnificent, twice her size, with midnight fur that seemed to absorb the storm's darkness. He threw back his head and howled, the sound rising above even the thunder. Then he turned and ran, a silent invitation in the glance he cast over his shoulder. For the first time in years, Isla ran not away from something, but toward it, toward him, toward the future that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Why was it easier to fight him than admit I'd never felt more alive than when he was chasing me? Freedom tastes different when you've chosen your own chains. Sweeter, deeper, and infinitely more terrifying than running ever was. Dawn broke over Silver Moon territory, painting the aftermath of the storm in soft gold. Isla woke slowly, consciousness returning in gentle waves until she became aware of the warm body curved protectively around hers. Kade's arm lay heavy across her waist, his breath stirring the hair at the nape of her neck, his scent, pine and thunder and something uniquely him, enveloping her completely. They'd run for hours through the storm, two wolves chasing moonlight, and each other through rain-slick forests and across rushing streams. When exhaustion finally claimed them, they'd found shelter in a small cave high in the cliffs, shifting back to human form with the last of their energy. What followed had been inevitable, the culmination of days of tension, of fighting the bond that hummed between them like a live wire. Now, in the quiet stillness of morning, reality began to seep back in around the edges of their borrowed paradise. "You're thinking too loudly," Kade murmured against her skin, his lips brushing the sensitive spot where neck met shoulder, right over her bond mark. A shiver traced down her spine at the contact. "Someone has to," she replied, though there was no bite in her words. His arm tightened around her waist, drawing her closer against the solid warmth of his chest. "Thinking is overrated," he countered, pressing a kiss to the curve of her shoulder. "Particularly after what we did last night." Heat bloomed across her skin at the memory. His hands mapping every inch of her body, his mouth leaving trails of fire in their wake. The moment when they'd finally surrendered to the bond that had been pulling them together since that night in the alley. "The council meeting," she said, reluctantly pulling herself back to reality. "What happened?" Kade went still behind her, his body tensing almost imperceptibly. "You already know." And she did, in a way. The bond between them had deepened significantly overnight. allowing impressions and emotions to flow more freely between them. Anger, defiance, resolution. She'd felt the echoes of his confrontation with the council even in her dreams. "Tell me anyway," she insisted, turning in his arms to face him. In the soft morning light, with his dark hair tousled from sleep and their shared passion, he looked younger, more vulnerable than the imposing alpha heir who commanded respect with a single glance. A muscle ticked in his jaw as he met her gaze. "They've set an ultimatum. I have 7 days to reject your mark and accept the original mating contract with the Northern Rivers Alpha's daughter, or they'll invoke the ancient right of challenge." Isla's breath caught. The right of challenge was rarely used, a brutal contest where any worthy wolf could challenge the Alpha's decision through combat. If Kade lost, he would forfeit not just his position but potentially his life. "All this because of one bite," she whispered, guilt twisting sharp and cold in her chest. Kade's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone with surprising gentleness for one so powerful. "No," he said firmly. "All this because for generations, our kind has forgotten what true mate bonds are meant to be. We've turned something sacred into political currency." His conviction should have reassured her, but instead it only deepened the chasm opening inside her. "I'm not worth this," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. "I'm not worth your position, your pack's stability." "Don't," he cut her off, his voice dropping to that alpha register that sent ripples of awareness through her. "Don't tell me what you're worth. I've spent my entire life weighing political value against personal desire, and I'm done with it." Outside their sanctuary, a bird called, the first notes of a morning song that seemed jarringly normal against the weight of their conversation. Isla pulled away slightly, needing distance to think clearly. "What happens now?" she asked, wrapping her arms around herself as she sat up. Kade watched her, his blue eyes tracking every movement as if memorizing her. "We go back," he said simply. "I face the council again, this time with my mate at my side." The word mate sent a complicated mix of emotions spiraling through her. Longing, fear, a desperate kind of hope she'd thought she'd buried years ago. "And if they reject me?" she pressed. "If they force you to choose between me and your birthright?" His smile held no humor. "Then they learn what it means to corner an alpha." Before she could respond, a howl pierced the morning silence. Urgent, demanding, carrying a message that made Kade bolt upright, suddenly alert. "What is it?" she asked, though part of her already knew. The bond thrummed with sudden tension, with Kade's spike of alarm. "Intruders," he growled, already reaching for the clothes they'd discarded the night before. "Northern Rivers wolves on our territory without permission." They dressed hastily, the peaceful bubble of their morning shattered. As they emerged from the cave, 3 more howls joined the first, the Silver Moon Patrol signaling the intruders were heading toward the main pack grounds. "They wouldn't dare attack," Isla said, hurrying to keep pace with Kade's longer strides as they descended the rocky path. His expression had hardened into the mask of the alpha heir, all traces of the tender lover from moments ago hidden beneath layers of duty and command. "They're not attacking," he said grimly. "They're coming for you." The words sent ice through her veins. "Me? Why would they?" "Because you're the obstacle to their alliance," he cut in, pausing to grip her shoulders, his eyes boring into hers with fierce intensity. "And they've clearly decided removing you is simpler than negotiating." Fear, not for herself but for Kade, made her voice shake. "I should go. If I leave, they'll have no reason to. If you run now, I'll only have to find you again," he interrupted, his hands tightening on her shoulders. "We face this together." Together. The word was both promise and challenge. The main pack grounds came into view as they crested the final hill, and with it, the scene that would change everything. A delegation of Northern Rivers wolves stood in the central clearing, surrounded by snarling Silver Moon guards. At their center stood a familiar figure that made Isla's blood run cold. "Derek," she whispered. disbelief coloring her voice. Her ex-boyfriend stood tall and arrogant among the Northern River's wolves, dressed in the formal attire of a pack representative. When he spotted her, his lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. "Isla," he called, his voice carrying across the clearing. "There you are. We've come to take you home." Kade's growl was low and dangerous, vibrating through the air between them. "She is home." Derek's smile only widened. "Actually, the council has ruled otherwise." He produced an official-looking document sealed with the marks of both pack elders. By order of the combined councils, the female known as Isla Vale is to be remanded to Northern River's custody for the crime of interfering with a sanctioned mating. Whispers rippled through the gathering crowd of silver moon wolves. Isla felt the weight of their stares, some curious, others openly hostile. "That document has no authority here," Kade said, his voice deadly quiet. "This is Silver Moon territory. I am the law here." An older wolf stepped forward from the Silver Moon side, Elder Miriam, her face grave. "I'm afraid the law is more complicated than that, Kade. When a rogue wolf commits an offense against multiple packs, jurisdiction falls to the combined councils." Betrayal, sharp and bitter, flooded through Isla. The Silver Moon elders had gone behind Kade's back, conspiring with Northern Rivers to remove her from the equation. "This is absurd," Kade said, fury barely contained in his voice. "She's my mate." A claim unrecognized by either council, Derek countered smoothly. "The bond is incomplete, and therefore can be broken." His eyes fixed on Isla, something possessive and ugly lurking in their depths. For her own good, of course. In that moment, Isla realized the terrible truth. This wasn't about pack politics at all. Not entirely. This was Derek, unable to accept that she had found a true mate bond with someone else when she had rejected his own claims so many times. A heavy silence fell over the clearing as all eyes turned to Kade, waiting for his response. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension, with the barely leashed power of an alpha on the edge of losing control. When he spoke, his voice was calm, too calm, like the eye of a hurricane. "You want to take her?" he asked, his gaze never leaving Derek's face. "Then you'll have to go through me." The ancient words of challenge hung in the air between them, irrevocable once spoken. Derek's smile turned predatory. "With pleasure," he replied, shrugging off his formal jacket. "I accept your challenge, Alpha Thorne." Isla stepped forward, panic clawing at her throat. "Kade, no!" But it was too late. The circle was already forming around the two males, Silver Moon and Northern River's wolves alike backing away to give them space. The challenge had been issued and accepted. By pack law, there was no turning back. If Kade truly loved her, he wouldn't fight fate. He'd fight for her. Love doesn't ask for permission, it demands sacrifice. But sometimes the greatest sacrifice isn't fighting for someone you love, it's letting them fight for themselves. The challenge circle formed with ancient precision, wolves from both packs creating a living boundary that none would dare cross until blood had been spilled and dominance established. At its center, Kade and Derek circled each other, their movements measured and deliberate. The morning sun cast their shadows long across the ground, two predators sizing each other up before the inevitable clash. Isla stood frozen at the edge of the circle, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was her nightmare made flesh. Two men fighting over her as if she were territory to be claimed rather than a person with her own will. The very thing she'd fled her original pack to escape. "Stop this," she demanded, her voice carrying across the sudden silence. "I'm not a prize to be won." Neither man looked at her. According to ancient law, once a challenge was issued, nothing could interfere until it was resolved, not even the subject of the dispute. Elder Miriam placed a restraining hand on Isla's arm, her grip surprisingly strong for one so ancient. "You can't intervene," the elder warned quietly. "It would only make things worse." Worse than watching Kade risk everything for a bond that had begun as a mistake? Isla wasn't sure that was possible. Yet as she watched him move, confident, powerful, utterly focused, a treacherous warmth bloomed in her chest. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever deemed her worth the risk. Without warning, Derek lunged, shifting midair into a russet wolf nearly as large as Kade's midnight black form. Kade met the attack with practiced precision, his own shift so seamless it appeared as if darkness itself had taken wolf form. Their bodies collided with a bone-jarring impact that drew gasps from the assembled pack members. Teeth flashed in the morning light, seeking vulnerable flesh. Claws raked across midnight fur, drawing first blood. Kade's answering snarl vibrated through the clearing as he countered, feinting left before sinking his teeth into Derek's shoulder. The russet wolf yelped, twisting to escape the punishing grip. "This is wrong," Isla murmured, more to herself than the elder still holding her arm. "All of it." Miriam's gaze remained fixed on the fighting wolves. "It is our way. The strongest survive and lead. The unworthy fall." "And what about choice?" Isla challenged, anger overtaking her fear. "What about bonds that form not because of political convenience, but because wolves recognize something in each other that transcends pack lines?" The elder's eyes flickered to her briefly, something unreadable passing across her weathered face. "Such bonds are rare in these times. Some believe they no longer exist at all." "They exist," Isla said firmly, her hand moving unconsciously to the mark on her neck. As if in response, warmth pulsed through the bond, carrying with it impressions of Kade's emotions. Determination, protectiveness, and beneath it all, a fierce joy in finally fighting for something that was truly his own choice. In the circle, the black wolf had gained the advantage, his greater size and strength forcing the russet wolf to the defensive. But Derek fought with the desperate cunning of one with everything to prove. He darted beneath Kade's guard, teeth slashing dangerously close to the alpha's throat. A collective gasp rose from the silver moon wolves. A throat wound would end more than the fight. It could end Kade's life. Isla's hand flew to her mouth, a cry trapped behind her fingers as time seemed to slow. Then, with a move too fast for the human eye to track, Kade twisted, somehow using Derek's momentum against him. The russet wolf yelped as he was thrown, landing hard against the dirt with the black wolf's teeth at his exposed throat. Victory, clear and absolute. Relief flooded through Isla so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. The pack fell silent, waiting for the inevitable, for Kade to press his advantage and force submission or worse. Yet to everyone's surprise, the massive black wolf stepped back, allowing Derek to scramble to his feet. Kade shifted back to human form, his body gleaming with sweat and smeared with dirt and blood from shallow cuts that were already beginning to heal. "The challenge is satisfied," he announced, his voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "Take your wounded pride and your council decree and leave my territory now." Derek shifted back as well, his expression twisted with humiliation and rage. "This isn't over," he spat. "The council's ruling stands. She doesn't belong to you." "No," Kade agreed, surprising everyone including Isla. "She doesn't belong to me or to anyone else. That's precisely the point you and the councils failed to understand." He turned his back on Derek, the ultimate dismissal from one dominant wolf to another, and walked directly to Isla. The pack parted before him, equal parts respect and wariness in their expressions. When he reached her, he did something that made the watching wolves murmur in shock. He knelt. The alpha heir of Silver Moon territory, son of a lineage that stretched back centuries, knelt in the dirt before a rogue wolf with no pack, no standing, no political value whatsoever. "I don't claim you," Kade said, his voice pitched for her ears alone though in the silence, every word carried. "I choose you. There's a difference." The breath caught in Isla's throat as she stared down at him, this powerful man who had just humbled himself before his entire pack. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk everything?" "Because some things are worth more than power," he answered simply. "Some bonds are worth more than tradition." From the corner of her eye, Isla could see the Northern River's wolves retreating, Derek's defeated form supported between two of his packmates. The Silver Moon wolves watched in stunned silence, their worldview visibly shifting as their alpha heir remained on one knee before her. Elder Miriam stepped forward, her expression grave. "The council will not accept this, Kade. They will strip you of your position. They will exile you both." Kade didn't rise, didn't look away from Isla's face. "Then we will build something new," he said with quiet certainty. "Something better." "Alpha Thorne!" The shout came from the edge of the clearing. A young wolf scout raced toward them, his expression urgent. "Northern River's reinforcements approaching from the east border. At least 20 wolves led by their full council." Whispers erupted through the pack. 20 wolves with council authority wasn't just a delegation. It was an invasion force. "They mean to take her by force," Kade growled, rising to his feet in one fluid motion. "Prepare the defenses. No one enters our territory without my permission." The pack mobilized instantly, responding to the authority in his voice. In the sudden flurry of activity, Isla found her voice. "I should go," she said quietly. "This is exactly what I've always feared, being the cause of conflict, of violence." Kade turned to her, his expression softening despite the tension radiating from every line of his body. "Running is what they want, Isla. It would solve their problem neatly. The inconvenient bond broken by distance, their political alliance salvaged, everything returning to the comfortable status quo." "And staying means war," she countered, gesturing toward the eastern border. "Staying means standing for something that matters," he corrected gently. "For the right to choose your own fate, for bonds formed by instinct and heart rather than political convenience." The conviction in his voice stirred something deep within her. A longing not just for him, but for everything he represented. The freedom to choose, the courage to stand firm, the faith that some things were worth fighting for. From the main pack house, a horn sounded. The ancient signal that unwelcome wolves had crossed the border. They were out of time. Isla reached into her pocket, fingers closing around the object she'd carried with her since the night she'd left her original pack. She pulled out a battered leather collar, the symbol of pack belonging she'd torn off 3 years ago when she'd chosen freedom over arranged mating. With trembling fingers, she held it out to Kade. "If we're going to fight," she said softly, "let's fight for something real." Understanding dawned in his eyes as he took the collar from her outstretched hand. This wasn't surrender. It was alliance. Not submission, but partnership. "Together?" he asked, hope and determination mingling in his voice. The approaching howls of the Northern River's wolves echoed through the forest, growing closer by the second. Isla Vale, who had spent 3 years running from commitment, from belonging, from the risk of having her heart broken again, squared her shoulders and made her choice. Together. If he truly loved her, he wouldn't fight fate. He'd fight for her. And now, she would fight for him too.